This is the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, here to help you navigate and thrive with ADHD in adulthood. I'm your host, Zena, and I was diagnosed at age 36. As with many ADHDers, I have a rebellious and nonconformist style, and that means that there will likely be swearing in the coming episode. Please be mindful of any little people. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast. Today, I wanted to share with you an episode that I really wished I had access to when I was first diagnosed, or even back when I was, navigating the idea that I did have ADHD, which was a few years before getting diagnosed. So today we're going to talk about the 3 things that you need to know when starting out, okay? So these are things that not only do I recommend, but they are also proven to help us embrace and thrive with our ADHD diagnosis. And when I say proven, I will refer to some of the research from kind of the, what's the word I want, like founding fathers. I don't like that, but like some of the well-respected people in the world of ADHD, whether that be psychologists, psychiatrists, etc. So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is find or create a community. So a study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that social support is a significant predictor of psychological well-being. Now, that study found that individuals with strong social support networks had better mental health outcomes and were better able to cope with stress. So if you were to imagine way back in the day before we had houses and technology, way back when we lived basically in the wild, whether that was in the jungle or the bush or just on the land in general, right? When you were on your own, if you were to live on your own in the wild, it would significantly decrease your chances of survival, yet alone thriving. Okay. Whereas being part of a tribe significantly increased both survival and thriving rates. Now, the same is true for those of us living with ADHD. Going at it alone is pretty bloody difficult. Whereas being part of a community and being able to share the load makes it so much easier and actually enjoyable too. So I'm a member of roughly 3 or 4 ADHD Facebook communities online, and I also follow quite a few ADHDers on Instagram and other social media platforms as well. And in doing so, I am constantly feeling validated and feeling way less alone. Just today, I saw another meme that really spoke to me, and I just cracked up. I was like, oh yeah, I do that too, right? But I feel seen and heard and validated in these communities. I feel way less alone. And these are the places that I go when I want to ask people about their experiences with certain medications, what they've learned and how it worked for them, and anything that they can help me with. When I wanted to talk about alternative medication options. So if you listened to the last episode that we had, I talked about how I'm wanting to experiment with, I keep forgetting the word, like psilocybin, the mushrooms, I don't know. But anyway, I want to experiment with alternative medicines and really try to learn what other help and support is available. So going in these communities is such a great place to ask from people who have already experimented with and learned from different things. And often they're able to share with you resources and research that they have done so that you too can go and get yourself well educated. I've been recommended so many amazing books And I've been able to ask all of my ADHD related questions, share, vent, laugh. These people in these communities, they get me. So Dr. Edward Hallowell, in both his books ADHD 2.0, which I'm a huge fan of and highly recommend, and also Delivered from Distraction, he says the most important treatment for ADHD is connection. And in his book ADHD 2.0, there is an entire chapter dedicated to the healing power of connection. And this just, to me, this makes so much sense because I'm quite familiar with that. There was a Harvard study on adult development, and it was the longest study ever conducted on human happiness and on what makes people happy and healthy. And I think it went for about 85 years. Huge, long study. And it discovered, after all of those years and all of that research, it discovered that the number one factor for human happiness is human connection. So connection is found in our relationships with others, whether that's our family, our friends, our co-workers, or our neighbors, or whether it's with strangers on the internet who sometimes become friends. Now, I'm a huge fan of Brené Brown's work. And when we talk about creating connection with others, I think that she needs to be mentioned because her work has changed my life and it's changed the life of so many millions of people around the planet. And one of the things that she says is, connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. Now, I also want to acknowledge that that connection may not come from family or friends or co-workers or the people closest to us, because there are going to be people who do not understand our ADHD and perhaps don't even want to try and get it. Now, if you experience that is something that you struggle with when the people around you don't get it or don't respond well when you're sharing, do go and listen to episode number 5, where I talk about when your friends and family and people just don't get it. Okay, definitely go and listen to that. But I wanted to stress that, it could come from those closest to you, but whether it does or it doesn't, it's so awesome to be able to create a community or become a part of a community full of people with ADHD who get it, who will help you to feel seen, heard, valued. Okay? So one last thing I'll say on this is Brené Brown is also really well known for her research around vulnerability. So I think she calls herself a shame researcher, but she talks about all of the emotions and, human connection in general. Like, she's amazing. Definitely go look her up. But she has a lot of research that demonstrates how vulnerability creates connection. And I was at a meeting a couple of days ago now, and it was with a group of business women. And you're doing that thing where you go around the table and you have to introduce yourself and talk about what you do. I'm just not a fan of that. I find it very vanilla. So I wanted to mix shit up on this particular occasion. And we get to me, and I'm like, well, hi, I'm Zena. I'm a crazy cat lady. I have ADHD, and I have a whole podcast about it. And everyone was like, what? Because they didn't know that about me. Like, it was relatively new for some of the people. I hadn't seen some of these people for a while. And so it just got this really cool conversation going. And I said, yeah, like, you know what? Like, I actually went and got diagnosed last year because I was really struggling. And I got to this point of being so frustrated all the time and I just couldn't finish things. And I got really vulnerable with them. And I shared like so many things that I had found challenging and hard and really struggled with, and why my diagnosis and this whole process had been so liberating. And in doing so, I created connection with a few people in that room whom I barely knew or hadn't really had much of a conversation with. And they said, wow, like, I really relate to that. And I've always wondered if maybe I have it too. And so, like, we talked more about it. We exchanged details. We're going to catch up. But it was just so cool just to see how my willingness to be vulnerable about it helped some other people to connect and feel seen. Okay. So again, number one, find or create a community of people who get it. Okay. Number two is get to know your triggers and start to form a toolbox. So many years ago, when I brought a house on my own and I moved in. So I was living by myself, moved in, and I learned pretty quickly that I needed to have a toolbox or a toolkit of some sort in my house. So I needed a screwdriver because I had these two doorknobs on my pantry door and they kept coming loose. And every now and again, you just pull the knob and it would literally come off. Made it kind of fun to try and open your pantry. So I needed a screwdriver, okay? And then the handle on my frying pan started to come loose and I needed a different kind of screwdriver to tighten that. Then I had this beautiful big deck outside and I had little nails that would every now and again stick up and I needed a hammer to, bash the nails back into the wood so that it was level and it didn't hurt your foot or cut you or anything. I also needed an Allen key for tightening up the chair legs and also for making up furniture when you ordered furniture and it came in a box. So within a couple of months of living in this house, I had filled a toolbox with various tools that I would use around my house. And each time I discovered a new trigger in my house, I would find the appropriate tool to deal with it. Now, in the book Faster Than Normal by Peter Shankman, which is a fantastic positive approach to ADHD, and it's less about all the medical clinical stuff, although he does talk about that. It's very much about how he thrives with ADHD. So in that book, he says, in the faster than normal world, triggers are things in your life that when activated can throw you off course, kick your ass, or in some other way be detrimental to you and your goal of being the best you can be. Now, the first step when it comes to triggers is to begin learning and paying attention to you and what kind of triggers you. So I do this through a process of self-awareness and self-evaluation. Okay. So just last week on Tuesday, I noticed that at the end of the day, I hadn't really accomplished anything that's not fair. I had accomplished things, but I hadn't accomplished a lot or as much as I usually would accomplish. So I'd written and shared some content to my social media followers. I had coached a couple of clients and I'd also started to draft an email. But I had planned, or at least thought, that I would write and record a podcast, and that didn't happen. I would also finish and send the email, that didn't happen, and I would start work on a new project that I have since begun, okay? So here's what I did at the end of the day is I got super curious about why I didn't get these things done. So there are a couple of things that I know can distract me very easily and have quite an impact on the output that I have. And that is my cell phone, having my cell phone with me, because it is such an easy dopamine hit. I'm able to pick it up and scroll Facebook and Instagram and then look at my emails and then, open some other apps and look at all the little notifications. And on this particular day, it was incredibly distracting. Another thing was our lack of preparation and pre-decisions ahead of time. So I'm really big on decisions ahead of time and deciding, for example, what I would write that email about, having made that decision ahead of time, but also doing the same with the podcast, deciding exactly what that podcast will be about and how I will structure it or, what research I need to do, etc. So because I hadn't done that ahead of time, my brain saw it as just being too hard, not easy, not really fun. So let's go do some more enjoyable dopamine-filled things instead. So some other triggers for me recently I have noticed are when the kids are really loud. So I co-parent 3 kids half the time with my partner. He has 3 boys. And we have had school holidays the past couple of weeks. And sometimes it's okay for me, but like in the past 2 weeks, it's been around that time of the month for me where, I am already, let's just say, more agitated than normal. So I have noticed that I've been like hypersensitive to their noise, and it has made me really, really agitated. And I will sometimes fixate on their bad behavior, and that has taken away from my ability to focus on the work that I have. So one of the tools that I use is communicating with my partner. And we have a really good system where I tell him when I have specific things like recording this podcast, for example, or client calls where I need that noise to be at a minimum. And so he will either take the kids out and do activities out of the house, or they might go on their devices. Like, we will communicate and plan that accordingly. One thing I also started doing last week when I noticed this was a problem is I took myself to local cafes with specific work tasks in mind to get work done. I also really make sure to prioritize exercise and control my environment as much as I can. Another trigger for me, and this is one I'm still navigating and playing with when it comes to like the tool to put in my toolbox, and that is alcohol. So I'm not a big drinker, but I know if I have any more than 2.5 to 3 drinks, I will feel somewhat sluggish the next day and it will have a mental impact on me. So I drink 1 to 2 drinks, and I would say at this stage, relatively regularly, 4 to 5 times a week. However, I have had a whole year off alcohol and felt absolutely amazing. And I've started to do research on the impact of alcohol with ADHD. It's actually something that Peter Shankman talks a lot about in his book. So I'm still navigating that one, as do the tools that I'm putting in my tool belt. But that brings me to my next point, which is I'm still learning some of my triggers. And a newer discovery for me is time blindness. And I am working on becoming more self-aware of that and learning from it and exploring some of the tools available. And I will share so much more with you all as I learn and try different things. So I am sharing with you all of the things that I already know that work really well for me and for others with ADHD and, research-based as well. But I'm also trying a lot of things, and I'm going to share what I discover as we go along, okay? So often we notice the trigger after the event, okay? That's normal and totally okay. So what I want to offer is take a few minutes to get really curious with yourself and evaluate yourself. Now, for us ADHDers, our ability to be curious with ourselves rather than leap straight into judgment and judging ourselves for something, our ability to be curious is a superpower, okay? There is no judgment in curiosity. So when you know what works and what doesn't work for you and your ADHD, then you can begin to create a toolkit. All right, number 3, my friends, is accept and find the right help. So when the demands upon you exceed your ability to meet them, get help in the right places from the right people. So in his book, Taking Charge of Adult ADHD, Russell Barkley says, having a diagnosis of ADHD is like holding a passport to a better life. I love that. I'm going to say it again. Having a diagnosis of ADHD is like holding a passport to a better life. So it gives you access to medication, that's one, specific types of therapy, that can target your ADHD-related challenges. Coaching to help set and fulfill goals, improve health and lifestyle, and, further maximize the effect of other treatments. It gives you access to strategies for playing to your strengths, tools that can help you to compensate for any weaknesses, coping skills that will boost your success in specific arenas, support, and even accommodations. So when I say accommodations, like whether that be in college or other educational settings, even in your workplace, you may be able to get some accommodations. There is so much help available to those of us with ADHD. Now, this got me thinking about and kind of reflecting on my own ADHD journey and my acceptance and ability to really positively navigate the triggers and challenges that have arisen. Now, I think that my success in this area has come down to two main things, and I want to share them with you. One is my willingness to ask for help and see asking for help as a sign of strength. Okay? And if you're a person who, and I know there's, there has been I see it more in the older generation, but it still definitely comes through today, like asking for help as a sign of weakness. Okay, I definitely see this with my dad. Right? If you're a person who sees it that way, then I would encourage you to think of a loved one that you have, whether it be your best friend or a child or somebody that you really love and care about. If they were struggling, if they were really difficult, having a really difficult time and struggling, would you want them to ask for help? Would you see them asking for help as a sign of strength? Now, my guess is that you would, and I want to offer you that same way of thinking is available to you too. Okay? I truly believe asking for help is a sign of strength. Okay? So hence, I have been always willing to ask for help. Okay? So that's one. And the second thing is coaching. Coaching helped me so much that I became a coach 7 years ago. Okay? And I've been helping other people with the tools and the strategies that have forever changed my life ever since. There's a lot of research that shows how ADHD coaching can be incredibly effective for those of us with ADHD. There are studies that have found how that coaching has led to significant improvements in self-regulation. And when we say self-regulation, that's more around emotions, our ability to regulate and process our emotions. Okay. Also significant improvements with time management, organization, and academic performance. So the style of coaching that I have found to be most impactful is causal coaching or CBT style coaching. And CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's because it gets to the root cause of the issues and helps us to create behavioral changes and feel more in control of our lives. So instead of being more accountability based where you're accountable to somebody else, when you work with somebody who has a CBT style, cognitive behavioral therapy style of coaching or causal coaching approach, that gives you more ownership and responsibility to create your own accountability. Okay, self-accountability, so that you're no longer dependent on that person when the relationship ends. So, my friend, living with ADHD can be challenging, but it doesn't have to hold you back. In my coaching program, I can help you harness the power of your strengths. And those of us with ADHD, we have so many strengths. I can help you to overcome your challenges and develop effective strategies to manage your symptoms and achieve your goals. Okay? Don't let your ADHD hold you back. Take the first step and schedule a consultation with me today. You deserve to thrive, and I'm here to help you do just that. So you'll find a link below this episode, or you can visit my website zenajones.com/ADHD. So let's recap the 3 things to put in place with your ADHD diagnosis. Number 1 is find or create a community. Number 2 is get to know your triggers and start to form your own toolkit. And number 3 is accept and find the right help. Okay, my friends, huge love to you all, and I'll speak to you again soon. Hey, if you loved this episode, then come and join us inside the Navigating Adult ADHD Facebook community. Head over to my website, zenajones.com/ADHD. Make sure you add the /ADHD to get access to this group and for further resources and support. I'll see you inside.